As we worked on the moves and game systems for King of Fighters Maximum Impact, we were aware that one of the game's distinguishing features would be the shift to 3D that would allow characters to make moves and perform actions they couldn't have done in 2 dimensions, and afford players the chance to reacquaint themselves with the more human versions of their favorite 2-dimensional characters.
With the change from 2 dimensions to 3, we realized the speed of the 2D version of King of Fighters may have to be abandoned. But we worked to keep such a compromise to a minimum to preserve the feel of the 2-dimensional King of Fighters gameplay as much as possible.
As far as the particulars go, there was the fact that this year marked the 10th anniversary for the series. And well, it's not that we aspired to this, but there were requests to see what would happen if we converted the 2-dimensional game to 3 dimensions. So we reached the opinion that we had to go for it. The hardest part of this, and I've said this time and again, was how we would bring the images of the 2-dimensional characters to 3 dimensions. This took a really long time to work out. We listened to the advice of all sorts of people and took great pains to do our utmost to achieve this.
Well, when we talk about the first stages of development, what we really got stuck on at first was changing the 2-dimensional models into 3 dimensions. Everyone has the image of the 2-dimensional characters burned into their psyche, so when they became 3-dimensional characters, either this was different or the image wasn't right, and everyone had their own opinions, so that was really tough.
Well, the actual work took about 1.5 years. Before that, of course, preparing the things that had to do with the characters and planning what sort of touch we'd use for the game took 3 months or so. First, designers created a rough image for the characters in 3 dimensions from the front, back, and the sides. Then we made a basic model for male and female characters. We then began the process of making textures for these models that matched the rough image of the character and applied them to the models. After that, we began the subsequent steps of adding motion and designing. I came up with the profiles for the new characters because we already had the backgrounds for the old characters. Those profiles reflect that data. Then for the moves, we basically left those to the production designers and the creators of the game system.
My job begins with a rough sketch of the character that serves as a sort of template for the new character. And then when I proceed with designing the character like this, I make copies of the sketch. But at that point, I have to carefully select a design, and then after that, arrange the colors. And because there are so many colors for each character, these colors are then specified. Since this game is a 3D fighting game, there has to be another model for the second player, for which I also have to simultaneously design a costume and specify the colors. Since the second character model was designed with the concept of being a type of silhouette completely different from the existing characters, I went out of my way to give them new looks. But while I was doing this, I had to grapple with the problem of what people would think the first time they saw the second model. And I really labored over my designs, trying to keep that in mind. There's the character of Clark, and this guy's a soldier. But the moves he uses are more similar to those of a pro wrestler. Since his appearance and the moves he uses kind of clash, And given the popularity of K1 and a recent highly rated TV drama about hockey players here in Japan, I thought about giving his second model more of a burly wrestler's look. I thought a character like that would be good, and I'm rather pleased with the way he turned out, if I do say so myself. My biggest challenge among the characters was Iori Yagami. About 10 years have passed since he first appeared, but he's a character who hasn't changed much at all. He's a really popular character, so I was rather reluctant to change his costume, and I really agonized over selecting the various components and creating a suitable second model to complement the original character. Given the considerable weight of the King of Fighters brand, there's that pressure. And after that, there are the reputations of all of the various fighters gathered there. They all have to look cool or cute, and because it's a game that consists of the best of everything, that's another source of pressure. Even when you are designing new characters, the new additions have to measure up to the others. So I have a hard time trying to come up with the best character I can. This is a problem I always have with each King of Fighters.
This time around, we used a motion capture system and recorded various motions, but the big problem was that the 2D KOF games themselves didn't have to consider the dynamics of actual human movement. So, in getting actors to try to imitate those actions, we succeeded to a certain degree, but there are still many moves like spins and such that a human couldn't possibly do. In the end, we faced the necessity of having to create motions digitally, one at a time. It took us 10 days to capture all the motions we needed, and it took roughly 6 months of uninterrupted work to touch these movements up. One designer took responsibility for each character, and that took quite a bit of time. Well, characters who have special moves that involve body slams involved a lot of work because the motion capture system couldn't record the motions of 2 people at a time. So we had to record an actor being thrown and then record the actor making the body slam separately. Following that, we matched the 2 figures together and added additional motions digitally. Well, in varying degrees, we did touch up most of the moves, but Terry's crack shoot includes at least one spin made by the motion actor. We asked him to go above and beyond the call of duty and jump off a stand and then spin around on a mat. When we recorded the movements with the motion capture system this time, we employed 2 actors, a man and a woman, to perform the movements. But on the final day of recording, the woman couldn't come for some reason or another, and we got to the point where we wanted to cancel the session. But the male actor came through and performed the moves for some of the female characters. So 2 female characters' moves end up being performed by a man. There's a victory pose and some other moves of one of the more perky female characters in the game, but these were, as a matter of fact, performed by the male actor.
Let's see. After all is said and done, we had a total of about 40 people working on this project. Generally speaking, the actual period of debugging the program took from 1 month to a month and a half. But checks were made whenever we added new data to the program since the inception of the project. So for that reason, you could say that the actual time spent debugging the program lasted over the entire period of the production of the game. Well, actually, Sometimes when we thought we had properly saved some new data, it would be gone the next time we revised the program. There were a lot of problems like that. Well, basically, conversations get pretty weird. You just get so exhausted. Stuff like that happens. And that's like raging over lost pennies now. But since you're racing against the clock all the time for a variety of reasons, you reach the point where you lose track of what day it is, what time it is, and when certain deadlines fall. You can't calculate backward to determine where you are in terms of time. So for a variety of reasons like that, there are a lot of difficult things to deal with.
This isn't exactly a cheat for the game, but check out the backgrounds. When you consider the total number of characters in the KOF series, it's really quite big. That is, when you're talking about SNK games, there's just a legion of characters packed into them. But with this conversion to 3D, the number of characters has been pared down. Given this limited amount of characters, there's the temptation to insert just a few more. A character popping out in the backgrounds here, a character who's never appeared in the game as a player placed in the shadow of a column there. A player character who's in the game hidden somewhere over there. There are one or two characters you will find in the first stage, so I hope players will keep their eyes peeled for them and enjoy the search.